Good morning. I'm Kristen Miller, President and CEO of the Santa Barbara South Coast Chamber of Commerce, from Goleta to Carpinteria. I want to start this morning by thanking you all for tuning in today to our Carpinteria State of the City. I'd like to thank all of our speakers. We're grateful for our continued partnership with the City of Carpinteria and pleased to bring the business community this presentation. Carpinteria enjoys unique benefits of being a coastal community with a walkable downtown, restaurants, growers, and a growing technology industry. Innovative businesses are creating exciting new products and providing meaningful jobs. It all comes together with local government to ensure that the community runs smoothly. And the Chamber works hard with the City of Carpinteria to enhance the business community and support our local economy and jobs. Joyce Donaldson, the Chamber's COO and Carpinteria liaison, continues her stellar work for the Carpinteria business community, and you'll get to hear a few words from her at the closing of our program today. We're delighted to be here at LinkedIn's beautiful campus in Carpinteria. LinkedIn is the world's largest professional network with nearly 740 million members in more than 200 countries and territories worldwide. We're so proud to have their campus right here at home in Carpinteria, and they employ over 300 people. Since merging in July 1st, 2020, the Santa Barbara South Coast Chamber of Commerce has been busy helping businesses navigate these unprecedented times. When we presented the last Carpinteria State of the City in September, we highlighted that our board had embarked on writing a roadmap to recovery for the business community. Faced with the biggest public health crisis and resulting economic devastation to our local economy, our board set out to map a course for recovery based on challenges, milestones, and improvements to our local economy and quality of life. We published our plan at the beginning of February, and we expect it to evolve, but we're pleased to see many of our goals being achieved, such as steady reopening of businesses and schools returning to some in-person instruction. We want to thank our community for its resilience, energy, and solidarity during this difficult public health and economic crisis. We applaud you for taking necessary precautions, supporting local businesses, supporting nonprofit organizations, and our schools. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce our Chair of the Board, Kirsten McLaughlin.
Good morning. I'm Kirsten McLaughlin, Market Vice President for Cox Communications and Chair of the Board of the Santa Barbara South Coast Chamber of Commerce, from Goleta to Carpinteria. Thank you all for tuning in today to our Carpinteria State of the City. Cox Communications is proud to be a returning sponsor of today's event. Cox has been a longtime supporter of all three chambers of commerce, working closely with each organization prior to the merger. We were proud to be a champion of the historic merger of the three chambers here on the South Coast, and know that great things happen when we strategically align and combine efforts. And I am delighted that part of our vision for the future includes this series of 3 State of the City presentations and a State of the County address. Over the next 4 months, the Chamber will highlight each of our local cities and our county through these events. We know the last year has been incredibly challenging for our businesses, and we have seen the tremendous impact we can have when we come together as a community. The dire economic crisis created a unique opportunity for our chamber, and we remain laser focused on supporting our local businesses and working with our county, our cities, and our community through the safe reopening and recovery of our economy. One of the first projects we embarked on was our roadmap to recovery, to help map a course for recovery based on the efforts over the next 6 months and beyond, as long as it takes for our businesses and our community to recover. This initiative helped create milestones and markers for our economic recovery, and we are pleased to see both our health metrics and economic metrics trending in a positive direction. At Cox, we're investing heavily in our network and our infrastructure to bring us closer during these unprecedented and unpredictable times. At the Chamber, we're investing in programs and initiatives to support our local businesses and economy and enable our community as a whole to recover and emerge stronger together. The vision for the Chamber in any year is to advocate for the responsible public policy, offer networking and community building opportunities, provide access to business development resources, and support visitor services across the region. Our newly merged Chamber is proud to represent 1,100 business members and 70,000 jobs on the South Coast, and we thank all of our members for your continued support and resilience. It is now my pleasure to introduce my fellow board member and our host sponsor, Joey Zumaya of Linden, as he broadcasts to us from inside Linden's cafeteria.
Thank you, Kirsten. Hello, everyone. My name is Joey Zumaya with LinkedIn, and it is our pleasure to host this year's State of the City for Carpinteria. If the sign behind me wasn't a dead giveaway, I'm coming to you from our campus here in Carpinteria. And at this campus, we do a lot of amazing work around trying to help our members connect to economic opportunity. It feels surreal to come to you from here because it's been so long since I stepped foot on this campus. In fact, I remember the very day where we were told that we had to go home because of all the uncertainty that was happening from COVID. It's been over a year since I've been here. And while I'm encouraged about what's going on in the world that brings the eventual promise of returning in some capacity, there's also a lot of uncertainty around what that looks like, what the workplace looks like in terms of how we'll be able to congregate and get together with our team, not only here at LinkedIn, but also in the community as well. And while there's a lot of uncertainty, there's also a lot of promise of positive change in the short-term future that I think all of us are holding on to in anticipation of some semblance of normalcy. So I look forward to the day where I can return to seeing and being with my colleagues, not only here on LinkedIn campus, but also in the community with other businesses who employ people here and try to create an economic scenario where we can all thrive. So again, we're very pleased and honored to be able to host this year's event. And alongside with the Chamber of Commerce, we're very hopeful that we'll all be able to combine our efforts to try to create a thriving economic opportunity and economy here in our beautiful city. Thank you so much for letting us be a part of this year's event. And Kristen, over to you.
Thank you, Joey. The State of the City series is one of the Chamber's signature presentations, and we thank you for all tuning in today to hear these important updates from our local leaders. We have an exciting program ahead for you and are thankful for our guest speakers. Many thanks to Carpinteria Unified Superintendent Diana Rigby, City of Carpinteria Mayor Wade Nomura, City Manager Dave Durflinger, and Dr. Peter Rupert, Professor of Economics at UC Santa Barbara, and the Director of the Economic Forecast Project. The Chamber provides informational forums such as this annual State of the City, and this production would not be possible without the support of our generous sponsors. We're extremely grateful for the continued and growing support from our business community from Goleta to Carpinteria. A heartfelt thanks to all of our generous sponsors that have made this production possible. Thank you to our presenting sponsor, Cox Communications, and to our corporate sponsors, Agilent Technologies, Chevron, Community West Bank, Courtyard Marriott Santa Barbara Goleta, LinkedIn, NewsHawk, Residence Inn Marriott Santa Barbara Goleta, Santa Barbara City College Foundation, Signature Flight Support, the Tobes Group, and UCLA Health. We also couldn't do this without our supporting sponsors at Atlantic Aviation, Brownstein Hyatt Farber Schreck, the City of Carpinteria, Latitude 34 Technologies, Meister and Nunes PC, Montecito Bank and Trust, Pacific Premier Bank, Santa Barbara Airport, Santa Barbara Independent, and Village Properties. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our presenting sponsor, Cox Communications. Please join me in welcoming Michael Andrade.
Thank you, Kirsten, and an even bigger thank you to the entire team at our Santa Barbara South Coast Chamber. Joyce, Michelle, Courtney, Berlin, Stephanie, and everyone else for your hard work on behalf of our local businesses. While we will all love to be celebrating Carpinteria in person, I'm thrilled to be here today for the State of the City alongside Mayor Nomura, Superintendent Rigby, City Manager Durflinger, and Professor Rupert. At Cox Communications, we know our customers are more reliant on us than ever, with so much of our work, school, and personal lives happening virtually. And we don't take that responsibility lightly. We've invested over $15 billion in our infrastructure across the country over the past 10 years. And we're investing another $10 billion in the next 5 years to enhance our network and enable future technologies. We saw over 2 years of network usage growth in the first few months of Governor Newsom's stay-at-home orders. And the usage continues to grow every day as so many of us continue to work and learn from home. We accelerated many of our local network projects to meet our customers' needs now. And I want to give a huge shout out to our frontline technicians that keep our network healthy and our projects moving forward. Additionally, we're working hard to wrap up our huge renovation project at our campus in Goleta. The cornerstone of this project is a brand new critical facility, the building that holds all the back-end equipment and technology that powers our services throughout the area. When the new critical facility is completed and online next year, it will power the smart homes and communities of today and into the future. Cox is deeply committed to bridging the digital divide, and we've been working hard and hand in hand with Carpinteria Unified, Partners in Education through our Connect to Compete program to ensure all students have the internet access they need to succeed in our current environment. As we continue to provide education and COVID relief grants to local nonprofits and are excited to continue work with Girls Inc. of Carpinteria, United Boys and Girls Clubs of Santa Barbara, and a number of other impressive organizations. Cox is proud to be a part of this amazing Carpinteria community. Thank you for your commitment to our community in these unprecedented times, and enjoy today's State of the City.
Thank you, Joyce and the Chamber, for this opportunity to present an update on Carpinteria Unified School District. I'd like to begin with gratitude for the incredible support that we receive from the city, local businesses, community organizations such as Rotary, Lions Club, Carp Growers, 93013 Fund, Girls Inc., Girls and Boys Club, United Way, and our partners, Carpinteria Children's Project and the Carpinteria Education Foundation, and all of our school families. The Carpinteria community is extremely generous in their support of our schools, and during this most challenging pandemic year, we depended heavily on these partnerships. Thank you. Currently, CUSD serves approximately 2,100 students from transitional kindergarten to grade 12. We have 4 elementary schools, Aliso, Canalino, Carpinteria Family School, and Summerland, 1 middle school, grades 6 through 8, Carpinteria Middle School, and 1 high school, grades 9 through 12, Carpinteria High School. Previously, we operated a continuation high school, Rincon, which has been redesigned as a student success center at Carpinteria High School. As one of our equity efforts, we are providing access to all high school courses and activities to all of our high school students at Carpinteria High. Most of our students are Hispanic or Latino, 75%, white, 22%, Asian, 1%, and African American, 0.2%. 61% are socioeconomically disadvantaged, and 32% are English learners. The last reported graduation rate was in June 2019 at 90.9%. CUSD employs 300 administrative, credentialed, and classified staff. The range of teacher compensation, salary, and benefits is $76,764 to $132,022 for a 183-day work year. The average CUSD teacher tenure is 18 to 20 years. CUSD is a basic aid district funded primarily by local property taxes with some state, federal, and local funds. This year's budget is $32 $105,538, and 80% is spent on salaries and benefits, 10% on services and operating costs, 7% on books and supplies, and 2% on special education, with less than 1% on capital outlay. California schools were closed last year on March 13 due to the COVID-19 pandemic. We quickly transitioned into remote learning by purchasing 1,000 computers to distribute to students, 100 hotspots for internet connectivity, and by providing 600 daily drive-by sack lunches. Teachers, staff, parents, and students have been the heroes of online learning and homeschooling. Governor Newsom, the California Department of Public Health, and Santa Barbara County Public Health became the authorities in which schools had to comply with to limit the spread of COVID-19 and protect public health. In July 2020, the California Department of Public Health published the COVID-19 Reopening In-Person Learning Framework for K-12 schools in California and an updated COVID-19 industry guidance, schools and school-based programs in August 2020. All during this past summer, I met with our district leadership team, Santa Barbara County superintendents, and Santa Barbara County Public Health School Liaison to determine how we could reopen CUSD schools while following state guidelines to ensure safety and health for students and staff. In September 2020, we submitted an elementary education waiver to reopen the elementary schools in a hybrid model. In September 2020, we submitted an elementary education waiver to reopen the elementary schools in a hybrid model to the California Department of Public Health, which was subsequently approved for October 13th. Additionally, Governor Newsom released the Blueprint for a Safer Economy, a statewide plan with criteria on tightening and loosening COVID-19 allowable activities, including school and school-based programs. CUSD Board of Trustees approved both the CUSD reopening plan and elementary waiver application, which included the following required mitigation strategies to limit COVID-19 transmissions: planning assumptions, goals for reopening, general safety conditions, planning phases, promoting healthy hygiene practices, intensify cleaning, disinfectants, and ventilation, implementing distancing inside and outside of the classroom with student cohorts no more than 14 students, train all staff and educate families, check for signs and symptoms, plan for when a staff member, child, or visitor becomes sick, maintain healthy operations, considerations for partial and total closures, and COVID-19 surveillance testing of all staff every 2 months. Elementary students are separated in 2 stable groups for physical distancing and attend in-person school 2 days a week and remain online at home 3 days a week. Every staff member and student wears a face covering, follows healthy hand hygiene practices, and is screened before coming to school. When there is a confirmed or suspected case of COVID-19 in a school, we follow the required actions determined by the California Department of Public Health and Santa Barbara County Public Health. This year, we hired an additional full-time school nurse, 2 custodians, and 2 temporary teachers to implement the state and public health requirements for reopening the elementary schools. The secondary schools, CMS and CHS, remain in remote learning until Santa Barbara County returns to the red tier, which is less than 7 positive COVID cases per 100,000. And we are planning for March 29th. We received approximately $2.2 million in Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Act restricted funding, which was used for additional computers, iPads, software programs, hotspots, network upgrades, outdoor classrooms, independent on-learning curriculum, individualized recess equipment, personal protective equipment, the Hilliard cleaning system, plexiglass, signage, and the additional nurse, custodians, and temporary teachers. Looking forward, we are anxiously waiting for vaccines for educators and childcare workers and for all students to return to full-time in-person instruction. This year's programmatic improvements focused on ways to increase academic opportunities for a diverse student population. We have added a multicultural literature class at CHS, provided targeted English learner lessons in STEM, expanded the dual language immersion program at Canalino and Aliso, and provided professional development for administrators and teachers in understanding the essential elements of cultural proficiency. We have also increased counseling and mental health therapy services to students and families as the pandemic has exacerbated mental health issues among our students. We are proud of the progress of the Measure U building projects, and we have completed the Canalino campus modernization phase 3 and removal of portables, Aliso campus modernization phase 2, and modernization of the CHS Student Success Center, CHS gym, and classrooms. This summer, construction will begin on Aliso modernization phase 3, the new CHS administration building, and the new Summerlin School. Summerlin students and staff will relocate to the main school campus temporarily while their new school is under construction for the 21-22 school year. We have spent 66% of the $90 million bond money generously approved by our communities in 2014. While this has been the most challenging year for CUSD, we remain committed to providing the best educational program for our students as we prepare them for their future. Thank you. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our city's mayor, Mayor Wade Nomura.
Welcome to Carpinteria. This is the Carpinteria State of the City report. And what I like to say is Carpinteria actually is doing quite well. Fortunately, because of the efforts by so many people, the city, the government, and local community has all reached out to do a great job making sure that we stay safe and sound. These are some of the reports that I would like to report to you, some of the things that the city has been doing. First of all, as a city, we've dedicated a website aimed at making sure that all of the information is put out there. Most of the communication we've done has all been focused on what our COVID efforts have been. Along with that, we took a look at the long and short-term effects of the economy to see what in fact we needed to do to make sure that the economy remained fairly resilient and that we would have less time in order to bring this back once we have an opening of the COVID issues. First of all, we took a look at it, and as you recall, we first started this pandemic a year ago in March, realizing that the time frame now, we're looking at over a year of the recovery efforts. As a city, we realized that those changes were going to have to be substantial. That substantial portion of that meant that in order for us to recover, we had to have not only a short-term plan, but also a long-term one that would be able to get us through these hard times, anticipating possibly as much as 2 or 3 years before we reach full recovery. Some of the things we did in the short term, and I would like to give you a list of these. First of all, we worked with the county on the RISE program. That RISE program was specific to the efforts that we needed to have in our local community, and Carpinterians were involved with that county work. Along with that, we stay in contact with the county health officer and our city stay in contact on a weekly basis, sometimes as much as every day. We are in contact with them to get the latest information available to us so we can then distribute it to our community. We formed 2 groups, an ad hoc committee for communications and a second ad hoc committee for economic recovery. The first one was going to be focusing on getting the information out in a timely manner and making sure that the information was true, valid, and something that was not tainted with different opinions or influences. The first part we did was in communicating was create a website. The city website now, the hub, is actually focusing a portion of that on resources for the committee and the community to reach out to and gain that information with. The communications committee has been very diligent in what they've done. First of all, when this first came out, I was fortunate in Rotary to take a look at a project in economic development that was done in the country of Australia. And there they recognized and identified that for every dollar spent within a community, that dollar would stay in that community for 6 or 7 times before it was cycled out of that economy. So this is an important concept that we brought forward. Realizing this, we wanted to make sure that the dollars spent would be spent here in Carpinteria as opposed to outside of the area, knowing that it would benefit 5, 6 maybe 7 different families along with that one. We work closely with the county, as I said, making sure that we are up to speed, up to date with the latest information they have. And also newsletters and some of the pandemic information you will see now are specific on what we do to make sure that the information is put out. And big thanks to the staff making sure that these go out in a timely manner. We also took a look at what we could do to make sure that the community was aware of what we were doing. Carp Cares was a branded sign that we put out there. You see it throughout Carpinteria, along with Welcome Carpinteria, Welcome to Carpinteria on sidewalk signs and also over Linden Avenue. This was to make sure that the community people or people that came in from outside of the community were welcomed in. We did not want to make Carpinteria look and feel like a ghost town. We wanted to make sure that we are viable and friendly and vital to everybody's needs, including the tourism. We have also included entering downtown, expect crowds, wear face covering. We put this out there to make sure that everybody stayed safe, not just the tourists, but also for us local residents, making sure that we had the respect of everybody and making sure that we all stayed safe. We also had lit signs, if you noticed, at the off-ramps and at the beach side. This was an effort to make sure that people understood the policies that we as a city had put in place. Protect and respect was something that the Santa Barbara County put out there. We also endorsed that program and that signage, making sure that we had consistent messaging throughout the area. Mask Up Carp was one of the fun things we did. Carpinteria City partnered in with the Arts Council, making sure that we had a fun way of also doing this, not just all serious business. And so an arts program was done where we had chalk art put throughout the downtown area, encouraging people to wear face masks. You'll also notice now, if you come into Carpinteria, that we have brand new signage put out there. This signage is something that gives you the spring feel, something more inviting, and we wanted to make sure that this was also part of the inviting portion that we as Carpinterians have for outsiders. The economic recovery team has been extremely effective and diligent in their work. And I'm going to read this from my script, but the first thing they did was to create a traffic management program for food distribution in conjunction with the Children's Project, feeding as many as 1,000 people each week. So that was, again, a very successful program. $100,000 supplement allocation was given to the Community Service Support Grant Program that benefited people with food distribution, childcare, and also helped out with Communify, Carpinteria Children's Project, Girls Incorporated, and the Boys and Girls Club. We, as a city, waived the 2020 business fees and tax payments to assist those businesses, making sure that they were able to move forward with the funds that they had to kind of cherish at that point in time. We waived the annual fees for the downtown business. We approved a moratorium on commercial property evictions. We also developed and implemented a temporary outdoor business permit process so that restaurants could then operate outside in the common areas as opposed to being shut down because of the inability to actually service clients indoors. We developed and set up barriers along Linden to make sure that there were ample spaces for pedestrians, for cars to come through, and also for the businesses to put out seating. A $100,000 COVID Release Small Grant Restart Program was put out with nearly 100 businesses actually benefiting from that one. This was set up to give Restart Program funds available for them to be able to then open up. We assisted local businesses also with the licensing program and the certification process. We actually did this door to door. And on the 4th of July, we included with that Plazita, similar to what we do for the Avocado Fest and what Santa Barbara did downtown, and actually setting up one block area there for seating for people to enjoy the 4th of July. We also, along with that, included the seats, chairs, and then the stations for hand washing, cleaning, and sanitizing. So all this was done in conjunction with the community to make sure that they had what they needed. $49,205 was given to the Community Development Block Grant as a county emergency rental assistance program to make sure that people were able to stay where they were staying. We approved the closure of Linden between 6th and 8th Street, 8th Avenue, and the reason we did that was to replicate what was being done in Santa Barbara. We wanted to give this a test to see if in fact this was something going to be viable. we found, in fact, it was not going to be as successful as it was in Santa Barbara. So we immediately changed that over at request of the downtown residents or commercial residents. So because of that one, that change occurred. We then had a second round of restart money. That was $30,000, which was matched by the county foundation, and that made $130,000 that we gave out to local communities, businesses for their efforts in opening back up again, realizing that they are going to be crucial to the economic recovery that we are going to be facing. I would also put a big shout out to the community for what they've done. Better Together, CARP 93013, Rotary Initiated Foundation, gave out over $250,000 to the community in helping out their efforts. And I also know that I missed quite a few of you, so a huge thank you to all of you in Carpinteria for your efforts in making sure that we stay Carpinteria and that we help out each other. Our best effort is to minimize what's happened during this pandemic time. I think one of the important things is that the less we have to recover from, the faster we will recover, realizing that it is going to take some time. One of the benefits that we have seen is that in the city, building permits has skyrocketed. A lot of people are now working on trying to remodel their homes based on being at home. We also are working on seeing the effects of the pandemic itself and making sure that we as a community try and go as close as we can to day the way it used to be before. Measure X money now has improved our roads. Our freeway improvement section has now seen changes. We're just about done with the ones on Casitas Pass and Linden, so those benefits we have seen. The nonprofit sector has continued to help us out tremendously. We are doing, in turn, helping them out with that one. The City Council has also seen fit to put forward a social and racial equity program committee, so we'll be looking at that. And also, I would like to give out another big news, and that is on June 10th of this year, the Tamil Interpretive Play Area celebrates its 10th anniversary. So something to look forward to as we look into going back to normal. I would like to give special thanks to the City Council, Al Clark, Greg Carty, we have Roy Lee, and also Natalia Alicon, all working above and beyond what was asked of them. So a big thank you for them. I know for a fact that each and every one of them is making sure that we as a community stay close-knit and look out for each other. I would also like to thank staff. City staff has been outstanding at this time. Many of them are working above and beyond the call of duty. They're working well above what is expected of them, and so big thank you to them. Most importantly, I would like to thank the community. In this time of frustration, this time it could have been a lot worse, but because we are Carpinterians, I've seen that come forward, and I've seen the partnerships and the cooperation we have in making sure that each and every one of us stay safe and stay viable as part of a community. So there's no other place like Carpinteria. I would like to thank all of you Carpinterians for making it that special. At this time, I would like to bring up Dave Durflinger, our city manager. He is the one that works right beside me. Actually, he works beyond me. He is the glue of what we have seeing happening within the city. He will be touching on the new projects we've been doing, some of the information on the COVID portion of it, and I touched on the current times, but I have not looked at or touched on the long-term plan that we have as we move ahead with the COVID pandemic and relief funds. And with that, thank you very much for your time. Here's Dave.
Thank you for the introduction, Mayor Nomura, and thank you for your leadership in the community. The mayor has led the city in its efforts to communicate important information about the pandemic throughout this last year. Thank you to the Chamber for partnering with the city on getting that important information out. Dr. Rupert from the Economic Community Project at UCSB for its webinar series that has gotten critical information out to the community, and to the County Rise effort, as the mayor mentioned, it's gotten also important information out to the Carpinteria business community. Today I'm going to talk a little about the Carpinteria economy, new programs and legislation that we're working on at the city, and give you a snapshot of city finances here as we hopefully head out of the pandemic. The pandemic has reinforced the importance of support for the business community of Carpinteria and our local economy, and how broadly that should be understood. It's reinforced the importance of our government organization being creative, flexible, and having low barriers to assistance, Some of the things that the mayor touched on included small business grants and providing space for businesses to operate in the street right-of-way. It's reinforced the importance of partnerships in the community, including with our community service providers that have helped support the Carpinteria residential community and providing a safety net. It's reinforced the importance of investing in community assets, including the built environment and our infrastructure. Carpinteria is known as a quaint, small town. Our policies and regulations support that, encouraging investment over time that complements that local charm. Examples recently include the Sunburst Winery, the Good Plow Restaurant at the old Foster's Freeze, and a new project in the 700 block of Linden where the old hardware store was. These are projects that will adaptively reuse existing buildings and reinvest in our community. They're locally owned and operated businesses that again will reinvest in our Carpinteria community. We want to make the path to these types of projects straightforward and easy and allow for a greater amount of local investment over time to strengthen what's already strong about Carpinteria. We want to invest in our infrastructure as an important aspect that supports the Carpinteria local economy. There's a report that came out just recently from the American Society of Civil Engineers that provided grades nationally. California gets a C- on infrastructure overall, a D for roads, a D- for parks, and a D+ for stormwater management. We are doing better in Carpinteria, and we want to continue to do better and build on that. Fortunately, we have a local sales tax measure, Measure X, and the county has a countywide sales tax measure that both will help invest in infrastructure over time. The freeway project that the mayor mentioned is a result of that investment by taxpayers, and we're going to be able to invest more in Carpinteria infrastructure, including over $2 million this year in street pavement. We're going to be replacing the bridge over Carpinteria Creek on Carpinteria Avenue, replacing play structures, building new parks, a skate park and a pocket park. We're going to be developing the Rincon Preserve area as a new open space park with trails, restrooms, and a parking area. We're going to be making key trail connections from the Rincon County Park up to the Carpinteria Bluffs and from Santa Claus Lane to Carpinteria Avenue so that there's a walking and biking path from one side of Carpinteria to the other all along the coast. These types of investments, again, help support the local economy. They help property values, they help businesses, and they promote tourism. So to talk a little bit about some new programs and legislative work. Last year, speaking here before you, I talked about the new Parks and Recreation and Facilities Maintenance Division. They're now working away and doing great work. They recently rewrote all of our landscape maintenance specifications, and we issued a request for proposal. The aim being to improve the quality of landscape maintenance in our parks and right-of-ways. This year we have even more dramatic improvements of the organization slated, including taking over the Carpinteria Branch Library. The Branch Library has been run by the County of Santa Barbara and operated by the City of Santa Barbara successfully for years. But after a community group got together and requested that we look at operating it locally to provide better local programs, the City Council has approved that. By July of 2022, the City of Carpinteria will be operating our local library. We're also looking forward to implementing some new equity programs. In November of 22, we'll have our first election of City Council members by districts. The purpose of this is to ensure that all communities of interest in Carpinteria are represented on the City Council. We'll also be starting a racial equity and social justice program, institutionalizing best practices for delivery of projects, programs, and services by the city through an equity lens. Being a community leader in providing an ongoing roundtable for dialogue on equity issues in our community is also a goal of the Racial Equity and Social Justice Program. Policies and regulations that we're working on include a complete update of the city's general plan and local coastal plan and zoning regulations. These are the policies and regulations that guide development in our community. and a community and city council commission have been working for over a year on that project. We expect to make significant progress this year. That includes new elements on sea level rise and a healthy community. We'll also be updating the city's housing element and implementing new regulations in response to state housing laws, including regulations on accessory dwelling units, bonus density provisions for multifamily housing, and establishing objective standards for new development that will streamline the permitting process. I'll now move on to city finances. As the mayor indicated, we're fortunate we've started in a very good place as we headed into the pandemic. We had years of conservative spending that have allowed us to build up good reserves. The response to what we knew was going to be a significant loss in revenue included cuts, hiring freezes, and the use of some reserves, our rainy day fund, in order to continue to provide important services. I'll start with showing you a slide on total city revenues. It shows that all of our funds, we have over 18 funds, is at about 19.6 million in revenues. The largest portion of that is for capital project funding, and these are restricted revenues that come largely from the state and federal government. And then the other, what we call the big three in revenues, property tax revenues at about 4.5 million, sales tax revenue, and the transient occupancy tax, which is a hotel, also known as the hotel bed tax. On the expense side of all funds, we're at about 22.5 million. It's not unusual to see a greater amount of expenditures in this all funds pie chart because it includes a significant amount of capital outlay. In this year, close to $8 million are planned for capital expenditures. And use of fund balance occurs in order to invest in those capital projects. Now I'll talk about two specific funds as a part of the city's overall budget, the general fund and the Measure X fund. There are two biggest discretionary funds. The general fund revenues are at 9.6 million. Pre-pandemic, revenues in the general fund were 10.6 million, so a significant drop. Again, the big three revenue sources include property tax, sales tax, and the hotel bed tax. All have been affected in some form by the pandemic. On the expense side, we have about $10.3 million in spending as we've continued to deliver our regular day-to-day city services as well as responding to the pandemic. As I mentioned, it's not unusual overall to see spending of reserves for capital projects, but in the general fund, it is highly unusual to see expenses exceed revenues. In my 22 years with the city, I think this is only the third time that we've had deficit spending. And we don't do that lightly. Using the rainy day reserve fund was important to continue to deliver important services to the community. Total reserves of the city, $6 million, are healthy and allow us to do this. Prudent decisions in the past by city councils, again, have allowed us to weather the storm, so to speak, of this pandemic. And we expect the recovery to come soon. I'll talk about some specific revenue sources of the general fund, including now the property tax. Property tax has been one of the good bits of news as it has continued to grow despite the recession. We're at about 4.3 million now, and the year-to-date estimate, we had budgeted about 4.2 million, so an improvement there. The transient occupancy tax took the biggest hit. Pre-pandemic, we were at 2.6 million, and we're now estimating year-to-date that we'll end this year at 1.9 million. Over the pandemic period, that's a $1.3 million loss in revenue on the hotel bed tax. Sales tax is interesting. We had projected a drop to 1.6 million from a pre-pandemic high of 1.9 million in the state sales tax. We're going to do a little bit better, and as the mayor touched on, this is really due to the efforts of the community in coming out and investing in local businesses, patronizing local businesses. From January to September of 2020, to touch on the three largest business types, casual dining saw a decline of 23%, but that's as compared to 28% drop in revenues countywide and 38% in the state. So we're doing better than most places. Grocery stores in Carpinteria saw a drop of just 1%. Countywide, that was a 2.4% drop, and statewide, 7%. So it's just an indication in our sales tax that the community really has come out and supported local businesses. The final slide that I want to show you is the Measure X fund. This is our local sales tax that voters approved in 2018, and it's doing quite well. We had estimated at $2.5 million that we'd see a drop during the pandemic, but in fact we saw growth. Our current year-end estimate is at $3 million for the tax. This is due in part to what I mentioned, locals coming out and spending money locally, but also to other revenue sources that we don't have much experience with, because local sales tax measure applies sales tax to areas that the state sales tax does not. This revenue will be used for supporting the library, pavement maintenance and park maintenance, expanding in that area, and to pay for a community resource deputy position, amongst other things. So we're very pleased to have this revenue source that's allows us not only to maintain, but grow services here in the city of Carpinteria. With that, thank you very much, and I'll now introduce Dr. Peter Rupert.
Great, thanks very much, Dave, for inviting me to give a talk today. Here at Linden campus, beautiful, and as the Superintendent Rigby just mentioned, education's super important. This is the old lynda.com taken over by LinkedIn. I think they have around 340 employees here. They're still hiring. They have some job openings, so it's great to have a company like LinkedIn here. So who would have thought we'd be here today at LinkedIn filming due to the pandemic? Even though I run the economic forecast project, this is exactly the reason I don't forecast. Everyone was wrong. We didn't know what would it be looking like a year from now. So I am an economics professor, and so as always, I like to have a pop quiz. And so here's the quiz. The quiz is, what fraction of online total sales are online? I'll give you a second to think about that. The answer is about 14%. And I think most people believe, due to the pandemic, that we've gone completely online, that everything's bought online. It's only about 14%. So retail isn't dead. Retail's changing. The pandemic has certainly accelerated what's happening in that space. So let me do a quick overview of what I see happening lately. So the labor market is still reeling. It's still tough out there for the labor market. And it's affected different industries much, much differently. So it's really hard on some areas. Some people are actually doing better. There's going to be more stimulus checks coming if the federal government gets their act together sooner rather than later. And there's some markets that are just on fire. The stock market sets a record every day. Housing is amazing. And I think we just saw that the county of Santa Barbara is going to turn out to have a $5 million budget surplus that they didn't know they were going to have once they predicted it. So what's the reason for that? Well, many. So their previous estimates a year ago, and of course they're way off, but who wouldn't be way off given what happened? Of the $5 million surplus, about $3.5 million is coming from property taxes. And as I'll mention again in a second, the housing prices here and sales it's never been so busy. The transfer tax on houses, up over 2.5 million, greater than expected. And of course, everyone's favorite, cannabis, is up 3.4 million more than people thought was going to happen a year ago. Of course, people are stuck at home. What else are they going to do, right? However, some areas that got hurt pretty bad, obviously hotels and accommodation. That area, transient occupancy tax, that's $2.8 million lower than expected. And what's really amazing, we can see this really easily in the data. So every time the government allows things to open up a little bit, we see an increase in employment. In fact, this morning, the employment report came out from the US government, from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, an increase of about 379,000 new jobs out there. More importantly, in the private sector, there was about 465,000 jobs, as the government sector shed about 90,000 jobs. What's been hugely impacted is the leisure and hospitality sector, obviously. We saw one of the largest declines ever in the data back in April of last year. March and April, roughly 7.5 million people lost their job in 1 month in that particular sector. Just recently, we saw a boost. Today, 355,000 have been hired back into that sector. What came out yesterday, and is still a little bit troubling, weekly initial jobless claims. Initial jobless claims are those claims that people, when they lose their job, they go out and they apply for unemployment insurance. So the first time they apply, they're called weekly initial claims. That number rose compared to last week. It went up to 745,000 people last week applied for unemployment insurance in the United States. This is a struggle. Typically, those numbers are much, much lower. So we're seeing things we've never seen before with initial claims. Those people getting unemployment insurance, that's been ratcheting down slowly. We're now down to about 4.3 million people who are still unemployed receiving unemployment insurance. However, that only some people get unemployment insurance, not everybody. So if you look at the total number of people unemployed, that's up around 10 million people still, much like the Great Recession. So this labor market is still struggling a lot. If you look more locally into Santa Barbara in the county, the unemployment rate skyrocketed last year in March and April, going up to close to 15%. Since then, it's been coming down steadily until, of course, we had a second closure back in December, where we saw the unemployment rate hop back up to over 7%. So that's where we are right now, much higher than we were before the pandemic. Obviously, before the pandemic, we were somewhere around 3.5, 3.7%. So we're double that, but we've been inching down, and so that's good news. The other thing that we've seen is that employment, total employment in the county, down about 15,000 people since the beginning of the pandemic. So this is a huge decrease in employment, and we're still low even though we're climbing a little bit. Retail employment down about 3,000 out of about 19,000 workers. So that's an industry that's been hurting. But let's not just blame the pandemic for that. We know that the retail sector had been struggling even before the pandemic. The pandemic has accelerated a lot of what's going on. And I think we're going to see, again, the retail sector get back. If you look at the hardest hit, leisure and hospitality, two sectors in leisure and hospitality, kind of food and drinking establishments, those numbers obviously went from here about 19,000, fell to 9,000 at rock bottom, and now has climbed back more than 50% of that. Accommodation, hotels, that business, it's still down 50% in employment compared to what it used to be. So this area has been hit very hard. The other part about that is most of those individuals in these sectors are close to minimum wage workers. And these are individuals who we call hand-to-mouth consumers typically, that really can't afford long-term unemployment. They're going to have a very, very hard time coming back. Unemployment rates in the US, again, they're down. But if you look at the peak of leisure and hospitality in the United States, the unemployment rate of those workers was 40%. That's just massive, never seen before. And some of them are never going to come back. And these have long-term income effects as well. If we look at the fraction of unemployed who have been now unemployed long-term, which is 27 weeks, that's been going up and up and up. The problem there is individuals who are unemployed for a long period of time lose skills. There's lots of evidence that once they're unemployed for more than a year, half a year, alcoholism goes up, opioid abuse, etc. So these are problematic. They're going to have a hard time getting back into the labor force. Now, not all bad news, right? So if we look at house prices have just, if I say gone through the roof, is that a joke? They're incredible. If you look at Los Angeles compared to the bottom of the Great Recession, Los Angeles has gone up by more than 2.5 times in housing prices. Compared to 2000, they're up over 3 times. So this is massive, the highest housing prices LA has ever seen. San Francisco's right there. And the other smaller ones that got hit very hard, Phoenix, also coming back. So these numbers, again, housing market is tearing it up. If we look at South County here in Santa Barbara, since the pandemic started, the average sale price in Santa Barbara County has gone up 21% over this last year. Incredible numbers for housing prices in Santa Barbara. If we look at the median or sale price in Carpinteria, for example, recently it's increased some. It's gone up this last month, actually, compared to a year ago, it's up 37%. So housing prices, again, super high in these areas. The stock market, as you know, setting records all the time. So people they're not out spending on goods, it looks like. They're putting money in the asset markets, and that seems to be a good thing. So, some final thoughts. As the superintendent mentioned, education's a big deal. We really have to understand children who have lost basically a year of schooling, and especially some of the lower income individuals, they have lost a year of schooling. And we know as economists how much that affects long-term income. One concern that I have, that I've been certainly worried about, is what's going to happen to income inequality going forward over the next several years. If these kids are not in school, their lifetime income typically falls by something like 15%. The richer areas, they haven't really suffered very much. They hire teachers through pods. They've been pretty well. So that's a concern, and I was really, really grateful to hear the superintendent talk about what they're doing in the schools. So we're not out of the woods, of course. Initial claims are still elevated, but there are a lot of bright spots out there. I think things like Southwest Airlines deciding to come into Santa Barbara is going to be a big boost for all of us. So I think that while we're not out of the woods, we still have to be safe. It's going to get better slowly as we get more vaccines. And so anyway, thank you very much for your time, and have a good day. Stay safe.
Thank you, Dr. Rupert, for your informative regional economic update. We are very grateful for all of our expert speakers today, including Mayor Nomura, City Manager Dave Durflinger, CUSD Superintendent Diana Rigby, and Peter Rupert, Professor of Economics at UC Santa Barbara and the Director of the Economic Forecast Project. Also, many thanks to our presenting sponsor, Cox, and all of our sponsors. The Chamber is so thankful for your contributions, which allow us to continue our robust programming and advocacy. This spring, the newly merged Chamber is looking forward to convening a monthly Carpinteria Business Advocacy Committee to connect our local Carpinteria businesses to government and keep abreast of all things Carpinteria. In addition, we're excited to hopefully bring back our culinary crawl and our community awards banquet, and we're excited to hopefully see you again out and about in Carpinteria. Thank you so much for joining us today, and have a wonderful weekend.